Welcome to another interview in our FM Expert series. Today I'm joined by Louise Burns. Hi Louise, how are you doing?
All right, thank you, very well.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Louise is an ex-Amnesty UK section facilities manager, and you've been working in FM, Louise, in hard services for kind of 27 years. And what Louise is going to talk to us today about is her experience of working for a service partner versus working as an in-house facilities manager during her time at Amnesty. And it's just a really useful insight. So Louise, I'm going to hand over to you. Start us off.
Well, so for like the first 10 years of working in FM, I managed contracts with 30 third-party suppliers.
Yeah.
So I would do calibration of environment chambers and maintenance of those sort of chambers as well. Most of them for testing automotive vehicles in.
Okay.
And then I moved into working for a service provider, and then working on a client site for 7 years in maintenance of a big 45-acre site. I mean, you know, I did everything from fire systems to trying to prevent fire mains from blowing up bits of holes in the road, to managing AFFF foam systems where I was testing live vehicles inside a chamber. So yeah, it was really, really experienced. And then later on, after a few redundancies, I managed to work for Amnesty for the last 7 odd years. So working in a charity as the FM was very different, but I think the grounding of working for the service provider gave me a really good feeling of you know, where I might be led astray by a service provider, or maybe they didn't know the product properly.
So I think there's two things, because you've got obviously a hard service background and you moved to Amnesty doing hard and soft services, didn't you? Yeah. And just quickly on that, before I ask you about pros and cons of working in-house versus outsourced, just from being a hard service person moving into a soft and hard FM role, you said it gave you a bit of an insight. You could tell when people were trying to pull the wool over. You were able to really question some of the engineers' comments and suggestions of what needed to be done, etc.
I think it's the thing of mainly male engineers. I have to say that I didn't ever come across any female engineers while working for Amnesty, although I did come across a female electrician when a temporary contract that I worked on.
But it's rare, isn't it, God?
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah.
But so they tried to patronize you.
Yeah.
And they feel as though you won't understand what's going wrong. But, you know, I have a background of working in sonar systems, and I know it might sound odd, but once upon a time I used to work on torpedoes. So working on sonar systems, and, you know, they've got mechanical sides as well as electronics and electrical sides. It gives me a great grounding in when I can smell a rat.
So yes, I'm sure that you got a good service once people realised your level of knowledge in the hard services. Do you think though generally that an FM can be just as good managing hard services without such a technical background?
If they've got a great service provider who they can trust, then I think that would work. But I don't know, in my experience, I haven't come across a service provider who I could totally trust 100% to give me value for money and be truthful about what's going on with the systems, whether it be an AHU or a boiler or...
I think there are some absolutely brilliant soft service facilities managers or soft service bias facilities managers who are now managing hard and soft services. And one of the things I always say on my training courses is, you know, don't pretend you know stuff, because as a person who's got a soft service background, you're not going to be an expert to the degree you are in engineering things. And if you pretend you know, you'll get caught out. I think what we should be saying is, I don't know, explain that to me. Why is that?
Yeah, exactly.
What is that buzzing noise over there? You know, and like you say, to use the service partner as an expert, and hopefully we get a good one. And there are some great ones.
Yeah. Explain to me why that thing's vibrating like the claps of doom, you know, and how you're going to stop it vibrating, because A, I know it's not right, and B, it's making the rest of the building shake. So, you know, we've got to, you know, we've got meetings going on, so we need to fix that sort of thing.
So you had,
I think there's a general feeling that it's all down to trust and relationships, I think, between the service provider and the client. You know, if you think you're being spun a yarn, then you can normally feel it, and then, you know, you can go back to previous service reports, and maybe, I mean, for instance, I had an issue with the lift at Amnesty, and I went back to look at the inspection reports from, you know, insurance company. I can't remember who it was, Aviva or something like that.
So you mean you have 6 monthly thorough?
Yeah. And then there was things on this. There were stuff on there that hadn't been done, and yet this service provider was saying, well, we'll give us some money and we'll go and do it for me. I said, but it's supposed to have been done already. So, you know, you
know what, Louise, you've just raised a really important point. And again, on compliance courses, when I'm talking to FMs, I always say to them, you've got to understand the piece of paper that you're getting back from an engineer, a service partner, or an insurance inspector, because actually, certainly when it comes to lifts, and you look at Lola, within Lola, but it says in the legislation, lifting operation, lifting equipment regs, it says what that certificate has to include. And the facilities manager, if they accept it and that information isn't included, it puts you in breach of the law. But so many operational people just see a certificate, accept it, they think, well, it's a certificate, and they file it, and they don't understand the detail of it. And we've got to read these things to understand. And if we don't understand, we've got to ask questions.
It's like reading an email and you don't read the last question on the email.
Yeah.
You know, and all that
stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, all that recommended stuff on those insurance reports about lifts is always at the bottom 2 or 3 paragraphs, normally on the other page as well.
Yeah. What I say to operational people they should do is they should get a good example of a certificate, laminate it with highlighted bits on, look here, check this, ensure that's there, that they can then cross-reference every time something comes in. Listen, we digress. We're talking also not only about your hard services background, which I think is really interesting, but also this whole thing about service provider experience versus then in-house, because I've done the same. I've worked for a service partner. That's how I started my career. Then I worked in-house, and it is different. Do you think there are certain pros and cons? What would you say with your experience?
I think that so if you're working for a service provider, you're looking at making money, and you're looking to keep the profit margin. It might only be, or some of the ones I was working on were only making 4%. So you know, that's not a lot of money, but you have to count the pennies to be able to get to that percentage. Yeah. And I think I'd like to twist it the other way around. If I'm working for a charity, then I might be looking to save 4 or 5 or 10% on on any bit of business I do, because at the end of the day, you're saving money, you're actually cutting it off of the budget, and you're actually giving it back to the organisation to spend on, you know, as Amnesty was doing, supporting human rights, which is, you know, what
important. Yeah.
We're all human, you know, all of us, every single one of us. We don't have the same experiences as many humans who are abused for human rights, like it's going on in Belarus at the moment, and living in Syria and Palestine and all those places. So, you know,
it's you know, I think a lot of people work for companies who could be completely interchangeable. You know, they're not driven by what the organisation believe in. They're just driven by, this is a job. And I think, you know, you mentioned Tom Crane in our previous conversation. Obviously, you work for Amnesty. Do you think it makes, you know, we talk about your experience of working for a service partner versus being in-house, but equally, you then worked in-house for a company who had such a strong drive in terms of why you were saving money. And that's going to make a difference, isn't it? So I'd have thought when you're negotiating a contract, I would do it for some companies because it was the right thing to do and I felt like I was being ripped off, but you're doing it because the money you save then is being used for a better cause, I guess.
Gives you a better drive, I think. Makes you not so money hungry, or I don't know, you know, I'm not investing the money. I'm actually trying to save it for a better cause and for ethical reasons rather than I think it's the end product at the end of the line. I'm not, you know, if I was working for I'm just putting it into shareholders' pockets probably, you know, or reinvesting it in the business. You know, if I'm saving money for a charity like Amnesty, then I'm actually, you know, it's going back into saving human rights and protecting human rights.
And did you feel as an employee you were treated any differently in your experience, working for a service partner versus being in-house? Is there any differences you noticed?
So much difference. Yeah, the terms and conditions were, you know, chalk and cheese, you know, more holidays, less working hours, thought differently and treated differently rather than a labour resource with a service provider. But you know, at the end of the day, it is pretty much the same job because you're still counting money. You're still trying to spend as least as you can on getting something repaired and getting it working properly, but getting it done properly, you know, to good quality standards. But you're still having to account for every penny and treat it as though it's your money you're spending rather than some disembodied thing in the background.
What about sort of processes and ways of working? So my experience working for service partners was that it was very sort of preset. You know, we worked to an operations manual. This is the standard because ultimately a contract had been signed with the client that we need to deliver X, Y, and Z. Whereas then, my experience of working in-house, it was very different. There wasn't anything like that for me to follow. Did you have a similar experience?
You know, I think it was much the same. Yeah, much the same. I mean, I think that both the jobs that I had, you know, working for a service provider and working for Amnesty I had a certain amount of leeway to, you know, and I wouldn't want a job that I was totally constricted by the way I would work. So, but yeah, it was pretty much like that. But then I was always given a financial limit. You know, you can go up to this bit before you have to tell us, you know, the management or above or finance department what you're spending money on.
I think it's a useful chat because I think a lot of people haven't got that experience. They've either worked all of one side or the other, and I think actually those of us who have jumped around a bit, it is quite a different experience. So listen, Louise, thank you. I'm conscious of time. Thank you for sharing your experience.
That's okay.
You know, particularly I know we talked about the hard service background. I think that's also fascinating. So listen, for now, I shall say thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.